Everybody.
Antonio, about Post System. So, no further ado, thanks to him, and I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Chief. So I'll tell you a couple things here. Man, I can see my ball spot. Holy smokes. So, all right. A couple things here. Everybody looks at this as a promotion briefing, right? Hey, this is a briefing on how to get promoted. And honestly, that's not what this is, right? It is not a promotion. It is not a promotion briefing. It is not the secret decoder ring to tell you how to make chief. It's not the encryption codes. It's none of that stuff. Okay. What I'm hoping you get out of this is this. Everybody always comes up to me, not just me, but anybody that is in any sort of leadership positions, like, hey, how do I get promoted? And my answer, honestly, is I don't know. I can tell you what I've used in my experiences, and I can tell you where the information is on what the Air Force wants you to be in a leader. And the Air Force actually does a pretty good job of promoting leaders, to be honest with you, especially with all of the changes we've done with the enlisted evaluation system. I think we do a pretty good job of identifying leaders and promoting them. And I don't just mean promoting them as in the sense of giving them a higher grade. I mean promoting them as in the true sense of the word, promoting them, bringing light to their actions, their achievements, and to them in general as a person. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. And this is the briefing, becoming the leader the Air Force wants me to be, right? We're going to go over what we value as an entity, as an enterprise. We're going to go over synchronizing everything that we value. We'll talk about capturing it in your records. We'll talk about the whole person concept and what that means. To give you a little bit of background on that, I've sat on force distribution panels. I have sat on strap panels. I have sat on promotion boards. I have sat on supplemental boards. Most recently, I sat on a supplemental board a few months ago. And although I can't talk about the boards themselves, I can tell you about my perspective when it comes to those things. And then we'll answer it up to discussion. Hopefully that's where we'll get the meat and potatoes of what we do and how we do. And no kidding, answer the questions that you guys have on your minds, okay? And then we'll go about my experience a little bit. So here's the big slide, the big, fat, heavy slide, right? And honestly, on this one here, if you notice, I had already captured, or when we made this presentation, we had already captured the new emphasis items. So this has actually been made for a few months now. And the new message just came out, what, like 3 weeks ago? So we have been capturing this for quite some time. And here's, if you take nothing else from this slide, I want you guys to take this away, okay? When it comes to being a team member or a colleague or a partner, whatever you want to call it, I need you to have three things. I need you to have a good reputation and basically just have a good personality, right? Not be an a-hole, right? I need you to have a good work ethic. And that's all on you. And then number three, I need you to be intelligent. I need you to be intelligent in whatever it is that's making our mission succeed. So what does it cost? What does it cause us to make our mission a success, right? And are you intelligent in that avenue? So when it comes to your work ethic, there's not really much I can do on that avenue. You either have good work ethic or you don't, right? We can tell you and we can give you that feedback, but I need you to have that good work ethic. When it comes to a good personality, you know, I think I learned it in this squadron, right? When the people say, hey, if you're on a mission and you're 2 or 3 days into it and you can't figure out who the a-hole is, it's probably you, right? So I can't do anything about that. Again, I can give you that feedback and I can tell you, hey, dude, you're the a-hole, but that's all on you. What I can do is I can make you intelligent on where we're getting some of this information from and what we mean by some of this information, okay? So some of the responsibilities, some of this enterprise perspective, some of the no kidding, the weeds on where we're telling you we're getting this information from, right? And those are those big three that we talked about. But here in the executing the mission, when it talks to job proficiency, it's not just being a great loadmaster, a great one Charlie, a great whatever it is, flight engineer, whatever it may be. It's not just doing that. Is everything you're doing, is it going to the execution of the unit's mission? Okay. Same thing on influencing unit readiness. Is what you're doing pushing and vectoring your unit in the right direction, right? And then developing yourself and others. You're going to see that over and over again, and you're going to see a trend with all of these things. I've circled these ones because these are the ones that we're kind of starting to focus on. We kind of shifted the big focus on them. I'm not trying to say they're more important. What I'm trying to tell you is this is where the Air Force is saying that the perspective now on being a leader, whether you're an officer or whether you're an NCO or a senior NCO, those lines are going to get more and more blurred because what they want is they just want leaders. We just want leaders from our force, okay? Communication, that's a big one. Are you a good writer? Are you a good listener? Are you a good speaker, right? Do you get those memos from TAF? Do you get them from DAF? Do you get them from your unit commander and read them before you transition them over, put your squadron vision on them, and then send them out to your masses? Do you tell people what that means for your organization? Or do you just hit forward and say, hey, here's this memo that General Brown sent out? Are you understanding what the content is? Okay. Emotional intelligence, that just means knowing your emotions, knowing who you are, knowing how to read a room, right? Are you sympathetic and empathetic? And do you know the difference between the two? Do you know the difference between sympathy and empathy? That's what we're kind of trying to get here, right? Team building. Are you willing to make those tough decisions when it comes to building a team? Are you willing to back to your team in the decision that your unit needs you to go? And is what your team doing, is it accomplishing the unit's mission? Okay. Mentorship, big one. Here's a big one too, right? It's great when you're mentoring your airmen, but the Air Force wants to know what you're doing for my airmen as well, right? What are you doing for the airmen in the MSG? What are you doing for the airmen over in the maintenance group? What are you doing for the airmen downstairs? Are you creating programs to help develop them to become the force of 2030 and 2040? Because those members are here right now, right? Some of them are in this room. Some of you will be here in 2030 and 2040 up here giving this brief, and it probably will look nothing like this because it will have morphed into whatever that is, right? And then obviously the foundation, right? I hope I don't have to tell anybody what our foundation is. It's our core values, and that's what we base everything on, right? Where the reason I put this in here is because at every point in our lives and our careers, our personal values have kind of come and interfered with our core values. And I'm not saying that's wrong. It's not wrong. It's actually right. Because at some point we had priorities that shifted and our personal values. I can't do that because insert blank here, right? And it may be a wedding. It may be a child got sick. It may, whatever it was, our personal values, what we hold as our personal values interfere a little bit with our core values, and that's okay. That happens. That's where we as leaders come in and say, hey, let's put him in the bullpen for now. Let's put him and her in the bullpen right now, and let's proceed. This unit needs to proceed without them for time being. Okay, next slide, please. All right, big slide here, but we just talked about the perspective here, right? The enterprise, where we're getting stuff from, feedback, the cornerstone of the enlisted perspective, right? It is no kidding what we're going to do to keep people on the right track. And that feedback has to morph. It has to morph with whatever it is that's going on in your organization at the time. So as the priorities in your organization change, that feedback's got to change. And you have to make sure that right here, the whole airman concept, this whole person concept is shifting along with your organization's goals. You have to ensure that you're creating those boundaries and you're being able to tell folks when those boundaries are shifting. And then when they're veering outside of those boundaries, right? Everybody portrays feedback as a negative action. It's not. You're just re-identifying those boundaries and letting folks know where they are on those boundaries. It's not negative, folks. Even LOCs and all that's letters of counseling, that's not, all that is a corrective action. That's not punishment. Okay, it is not punishment. All you're doing is you're telling your folks, hey, here's the standards. You're kind of deviating a little bit. I just want to let you know. Okay, and we'll come back to this here. EPR, that's how we evaluate, right? It's no kidding. It's telling folks what we value, and then we go right into the board chart, and I'll talk about that in a little bit here. But all of these slides, I'm going to make them available to you guys. I don't feel like everyone's just jot down a bunch of notes. You guys already have them. All right, this isn't a secret. You guys have these slides. Next slide, please. All right, so here's what I want you to capture when you're architecting your bullets, right? This is, again, not the secret code, folks, not the secret code, but I'm going to give you an idea of what I want you to capture, right? Next slide, please. All right, timeliness, quality, and quantity of mission accomplishment. How efficient are you when it comes to accomplishing your mission? And is your work, again, is your work focused on the unit's vision? What is your unit's, what is the ultimate, what makes the 22nd successful? Right? Think about that. And it's what you're doing contributing to that success. And are you doing it efficiently? That's what I want you to capture. Next slide, please. Being good stewards of our resources, right? Being good stewards of our resources. Do you know what it takes to accomplish your unit's mission when it comes to manpower, to equipment, whatever it may be? Do you know what to do to get more? Do you know who to talk to? Do you know who to yell at? Do you know whose desk to go and stomp on when it's going to require more of something? Are you a good steward when you say, hey, we got too much of this, right? Are you no kidding making those hard decisions? Next slide. All right, team building. We talked about this one already a little bit, right? And again, you're going to hear some of these things repetitively. That's what I want. I want you to see what's coming about this. Are you being able to innovate when it comes to building your team, right? Are you that motivator? Can you motivate them to get to that end goal? Is that end goal of your team, is it sync with your unit's mission and with the goal of your unit, right? Next slide, please. Mentorship, again, a big one. Not the first time you've seen that one. Are you mentoring everybody? Are you mentoring, if you're a senior NCO, are you mentoring the CGOs? Are you mentoring airmen from outside of your organization? Are you looking for opportunities to mentor? Okay, next slide. We talked about this, right? Understanding what the strategy is, understanding the Air Force priorities, understanding our core missions, understanding your unit's mission and how it contributes to the Air Force priorities. As those Air Force priorities shift, how that's going to shift your unit's organizational mission. And then how it's going to affect the people in your organization. Next slide, please. Are you willing to make those uncomfortable decisions? Right? So when you see somebody that is not enforcing standards or not complying with standards, are you willing to make those uncomfortable decisions? And pull that airman aside and say, hey, I noticed, and then insert blank here. This one's a big one, right? The environment of your organization. Are you creating a dignified and a culture where you're only contributing to that unit's mission? Or are you allowing those negatives to come in, right? We'll talk a little bit more about this in a little bit. Then next one. And then training. Are you meeting the training requirements of your organization? So you as a person, are you making sure you're providing that training to your members? And more importantly, are you equipping them to meet the unit's mission? And you're hearing the same things over and over again. And I hope you guys are like, hey, this guy's just saying the same thing. So that's kind of what I'm hoping right now. All right. Does this right here look familiar to anybody? Who's seen this before? Anybody? Yeah. You probably have. I guarantee you've seen this before. I know you have. I know you have. That's the page. That's the front of your EPR right there. Okay. So again, it's not a secret, folks. It's not a secret, right? I'll even take you one step further, okay? We just talked about 8 sections there. If I copy and pasted the next part of the EPR, guess how many bullets they want in that section right there? Yeah, 8. I wasn't sure if you were counting or if you were.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So again, it's not a secret. It's not a secret. Okay. And it actually explains to you what they want in there. So folks, it's there. The information's there, right? I'm just telling you where to go and get it from. All right. And this applies not just to you, but it applies to those individuals that no kidding want to make that next master sergeant, or the next senior master sergeant, or the next chief for that matter. That's what I need from you, because you're the ones that are going to make those decisions, not us. We're going to take your word and say, hey, that's who you're saying, and you're saying that by making sure you're capturing this stuff. Capture this stuff, and we're going to be successful. We're going to promote those leaders that you're saying we should promote. Okay, next slide. All right, formal board charge. Who's ever seen this before? All right, that's not uncommon. Not uncommon. Formal board charge. What are we doing here, right? We're telling board members what we want to promote. Now, I just cut this one section out of it. The board charge is normally like 3 pages long, all right? But this is what we're cutting out. This is what I wanted to highlight for this one, right? Because it talks about whole person concept. And then it talks about job performance is the most important. But sometimes when we talk about job performance, we think about, oh, it's being a flight engineer. Oh, it's being a load master. Oh, it's being whatever it is, right? Maintainer, supporter, whatever it is, medic. Job performance is everything we just talked about. It's everything we just talked about. Being your AFSC is your specialty. Whole person concept and job performance is being an airman and being your Air Force specialty. That's what we need. All right, we need you to build that network for yourself, because hiring authorities later on down the road don't just want to know that you were a great 1 alpha whatever. They want to know that you're bringing that network of experience and personnel with you, and that you're going to be able to help them accomplish the unit's goals. Okay, next slide. All right, I came back to this one because we just talked about the cornerstone, right? We talked about EPRs and we talked about the board charge and how that works, right? But now I want to talk about, hey, you just told us all this information is in there. Where are we getting this from? Where are we getting this information from? It's from what we used to call the little brown book, right? Everybody still remember when it used to be a little brown book, right? So, folks, it's in there. All right, it is in there. Here's what the little brown book, and I cut a few little experts out. Go to the next slide, please. All right, next slide. All right. So, a few things I highlighted there: excellence, professionalism, pride, competence. Be a role model. Be a role model. So, whole person concept, what does that mean? It means I want people to emulate you. I want to tell people, hey, here's Sergeant Bechtel. I want you to be just like him. That's what the whole person concept is. That was just an example. Don't be like him. I'm kidding. All right. Again, folks, I copy and pasted this right out of the enlist support structure. All right. There it is again. Effective leadership teams. Are you creating them? Are you motivating them? Are you being professional? Are they driving the unit's mission? Okay. Next slide. All right. Again, this goes through the detect and correct unsafe or irresponsible behaviors. This goes to the dignified culture, right? Recognize and reward airmen. I can't emphasize that enough. We want to know that your airmen are successful. We want to know that. Next slide. All right. Translate leaders' direction into specific tasks and responsibilities. We talked about not just being able to read a memo and hit forward. We talked about understanding how that applies to your organization. That's what that's telling us right here. That's what this is telling us. And then make sure you're taking those personal experiences and sharing them. Because as chiefs, I guarantee you, I'm not smart. I just probably screwed it up several times before, so I'm going to teach you how not to screw it up. Okay? Knowing the challenges that face your organizations. This is a two-way street. Because if you're a leader, you need to know, your subordinates need to know what your organization's problems are. And you need to share those. You need to share your organization's problems, your section's problems, your unit's problems, whatever it may be, your flight's problems. You need to share those so that folks are, no kidding, pulling in the same direction. And it's imperative they know it. All right, good stewards of resources. I know it's not the first time you guys, we talked about that one already a few times. It's in there, folks, right? Requirements, capabilities, innovate, big word, right? Process improvement. Are you doing CPI? Are you finding ways to make things better? Are you finding ways to develop the airmen and help them improve at rates you weren't capable of? Do we have better ways of making flight engineers? Do we have better ways of making load masters? Do we have better ways of making SAR? I know there are, because you guys are executing that, right? Next slide. Deliberately develop. I know you guys have seen that one, because I see it in your EPRs all the time. Are you actually deliberately developing? So that tells us right there what we should be doing, right? It says company grade officers into better followers and leaders. So take it to the next level. Take everything to the next level, and then capture that. Next slide. All right. Continuing your development. So making yourself a better version of you, and making everyone around you a better version of them, right? Chief of Staff of the Air Force reading list. I mean, those are actually pretty good reads. I'll take it one step further. Colonel Johnson and I have our reading list. And we don't just tell you what books to go read, what articles to go read. We actually provide them for you. If you come up to our office, the books that we're telling you we'd like you to read are right there for you to go and grab and go read them. But bring them back, right? Don't jack us for our books, right? And don't be that guy that just comes and goes and puts it on your bookshelf. Like, oh, look at all these books I got, right? Like, no kidding. And if you only have a few moments, say, hey, if I'm only going to read 2 chapters, Colonel Johnson, Chief, what should I read? And I promise I'll have that conversation with you. But come on by, grab a book, and we'll talk about it together. Okay? All right, there it is, that big one again, right? That's really big right now, folks. We've taken that to the whole new level. Climate and culture of dignity and respect. We're here now, right? The world is a crazy place right now. It's a crazy place. The 22nd doesn't have to be crazy. Right? And that's going to involve you guys. Because we talked about it. We all should be pulling in the same direction, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you voted for. That shouldn't have an impact on what the 22nd is doing. Can you go back one slide? If you, no kidding, want to know what to put in your EPR, I would say find this, go find this, and see if that's what you're doing. Is this what you're doing? If it is, find a way to capture it. If you need help with that, that's what I'm here for. That's what Chief Rapier is here for. Let us help you capture this stuff. But this is no kidding. If you want the decoder ring, this is it right here. This is telling you what we want to see in our leaders. Okay? Next slide. All right, so this is what you guys all came for. Because I know you didn't come here to see a 5-foot dude up here in a flight suit talking about some PowerPoint presentation. All right? I can't tell you how the board works, what the board said. I can tell you what I was looking at to try and capture some of this stuff. And that's what I'll tell you right now. So, next slide. Is the member currently serving performing duties in the next grade? That one is easy. If you're a tech trying to make master, and I see that you're already doing master sergeant work and all of those responsibilities that I just talked about, point in my book. You got my vote. That's easy. That one is that's the biggest no-brainer of it right there. If you're already acting in that next grade, why wouldn't we give it to you? That'd be silly. Next slide. Are they experts in their field, right? What are you? Are you a subject matter expert? And if you are, who are you sharing that with? Who is telling me that you're a subject matter expert, and what are you doing with that expertise? And more importantly, are you finding a way to make your replacement? And what are you doing in that? That's what I'm looking for. I don't just want to find out that you can do a pre-flight in 25 minutes. I mean, that's pretty cool, but I mean, I need to know that you're making the next generation of career enlisted aviators, the next generation of 1 Charlie Zeros, the next generation of you name it, whatever you want to call it. I want to know that you're doing that. Next slide. Are they leaders, and whom do they lead? Basically, what teams have we held you responsible to lead, right? And what have those teams done for the 22nd mission, for the group's mission, for the wings mission, for the Air Force? And were you able to motivate those teams? Were you able to innovate ways for that team to be successful? And were you able to make those tough decisions with that team? Next slide. All right. What does Chief Frappier hold you responsible for? What does Colonel Trumbull hold you responsible for? And what are you doing with those responsibilities? I want to know that. All right, next slide. This one can get a little complicated, but I'll tell you, it's, do they have breadth of experiences? Have you experienced anything outside of your Air Force specialty? And if you did, when was it? Did you work for a 3-star? Did you work for a 2-star? Did you work for the group commander? Have you done some sort of DSD? Right? That's what I want to know. I want to know that you are Air Force breath. You have that Air Force breath, and you can make things happen when I need a leader. That you've grown that network. Next slide. Here's where awards come into play. And not just for you, but for your airmen as well. Do you have team awards? Do you have individual awards? Do your airmen win awards? Does your organization win awards? I don't know of anybody that's won the Joseph Smith Trophy more than this organization right here. You need to be capturing that stuff. Okay? And you need to be capturing what your airmen are doing and what they're successful at. Next slide. Here's, have they pursued to better develop, not just themselves, not just yourself, but those around you? What are they doing? What are your teams doing to develop themselves? What are you doing to develop yourself? What are you doing to develop this organization? Okay. All right. So now it's okay. I'm sorry. So everybody that's ever heard me speak knows that I can't go anywhere without having a cool quote, right? Because I can't make my own up. So I got to steal everybody else's. So the one I chose was Tommy Lasorda. 1, because the Dodgers are the greatest team of all time. 2, they're world champs. And he was just a cool guy. But I'll tell you why I really picked him. Tommy Lasorda had this uncanny ability to take average players and just build a team of average players and be very successful for them. And when they asked him, how do you do that? He's like, well, I don't make players. I make leaders. Because at every point, somebody's going to be expected to lead this team. Tomorrow, it's going to be a different guy than today. And the day after that, it's going to be somebody different and somebody different. So I build leaders. And then they asked him, and that's, you never ask Tommy Lasorda 2 questions, you're probably going to get some foul language. But they asked him, well, what is your secret to making leaders? And he said, there are, when it comes, I think, yeah. So he said, when it comes to making leaders, there are 3 different types of people in this world, right? There are those who make things happen. There are those who wait for things to happen. And then there are those who sit around and wonder, what the fuck happened? Right? I chose this quote because I cannot emphasize enough that this is not a secret. It's not a secret. Again, you don't need that decoder ring, right? I'm not here to hand out the secret codes on how to do this. I'm telling you how easy this is to capture all this information. And don't forget that you don't have to do it by yourself. We are here to help you. We are here. If you don't understand something, or if there's something you need clarification on, that's why we're here. That's why we're here. But as you go along, I want you to go through, I want you to see some of this stuff. And again, these slides are here. If you ever want to come and talk to me and go over this one-on-one, I would love to do that with you guys. But it is not a secret. It's not a secret. Okay, that's all I have. I think that was the last slide. Yeah. So, questions about the enlisted force structure, about what you think we're going to with the enlisted evaluation system. Questions about the board. Questions about timing on the board. Questions about what you think about our APR system. Questions about feedback. Questions about the new ACA. I mean, honestly, like, we're open for anything here, guys. We're open for anything. What's on your mind? Sergeant Aguilar.
Who gets
picked for the board, sir? Like how did you get selected to, like, you said you've been on a couple.
Like who makes the board composition?
Yes, sir.
So the board composition is made up of an 06 and 2 chiefs, right? The 06 has to be related to your AFSC. So in most of the people, are most of the people in here career listed aviators? What else do we have in here? Well, everybody's really talking. All right. So, all right. So since almost everybody in here is in the flight suit, I'll tell you, the person sitting on your board is probably operations group commander or something equivalent. It's probably going to be a chief in the CEA community, and then it's going to be a chief from outside of the community. That's what makes up the board. Right? Was that your question?
Yeah.
Okay. And then it's composed of our hiring process is all done through Slickums. And we go in there and we volunteer, and then the chiefs group goes through and picks who's going to make up each individual board. Usually, if you sit on your board, you're going to be asked to sit on somebody else's board. In my case, for the supplemental, I was asked to sit on the maintenance board and on the medical board. So you kind of get different perspectives.
My second question to that is, people that get picked for that board, if you see somebody, say EPR or whatever, and you can just tell who that individual is, do you guys just put that to the side and let somebody else board it, or do you guys still board that individual?
You can still board that individual. Yeah, but remember that you can't. There are systems of checks and balances built in to where you can't single-handedly bring somebody's record down or bring them up, right? Because if you have a split with any of the other board members, you got to figure out that split. And nobody's leaving that room until that split is figured out. Okay, good question, John. What else, folks? We're going to do the 45-minute of awkward silence. I know it's usually 45 seconds, right, of awkward silence, and then somebody's going to raise their hand. So I'm going to try and fill that 45 seconds. But what do you guys have for questions along this? Let me ask you guys, what do you guys think about the enlisted evaluation system right now, the way it is? Sure.
Hey, Chief, how are you? Sorry, Howard from the 22nd. Quick question for you, sir. So sure. I've seen it in this quadrant, but specifically that we are trying to be as fair as possible and as true as possible, as transparent as possible when it comes to EPR rating. However, I guess a word concern or just question overall is the rest of the Air Force following that guidance as they should, or do you see that most of the EPRs are inflated, or do you see that they're actually, you know what, yeah, this new system's working, this new system's producing the right amount of qualifications desired?
So I'll answer that in two parts. One, I just want to make sure I understand your question. Do I think our EPR system, our EES system, our feedback system is 100% efficient? No. But I don't know, even in corporate America, I don't know that there's an evaluation system that is 100% efficient. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, so I don't care if you talk to Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Brian Cornell, whoever, the smartest of smart organizational leaders, they will all tell you there is not an evaluation system out there that is 100% efficient. And I think we're in that boat. The flip side of that coin is, are we in a better spot than we were in 2012, 2013? Absolutely. Absolutely 100%. Right? I think the reaction of people and when those lists, those magic lists that come out, right? We should see one in a couple of weeks. Those magic lists that say, here's who got promoted. We're seeing less and less, holy crap, how did he get promoted? Right? We're seeing less of that, if not eliminated altogether. And that's because you guys are doing your work. You guys are being honest brokers of who you want to see make it to that next level. And I think that's kind of your question.
Yes, sir. That's exactly what I was driving to. Because my emphasis would be, okay, are we, being competitive with the guys at Dover, commensurate with the writing of
sure.
EPR,
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And it all goes back to feedback, right, folks? We talked about it earlier. It goes back to feedback, and are you having those tough conversations with your folks? Because if you're not, you're doing yourself a disservice, you're doing your organization a disservice, and more importantly, you're doing that member a disservice. All right, so have those tough conversations. Please, if anything else, have those tough conversations with your folks. All right, I think somebody back here have a question? No?
I have a question. Has the Air Force ever thought about using peers or their subordinates to ever put on like points or a system of that nature?
You mean like a 360 review, something like that type of
Yeah,
stuff?
maybe.
So,
Yeah.
I think the closest we've come in that discussion, and it's actually a discussion that I think it's been a long time since I've been in that realm of the decision makers, but I think the closest that we've come, and we're still having the discussion right now, is to have a rating of the rater. And I'll tell you what I mean by that, right? So let's say you have Chief Rapier and you have Chief Fierro, right? You have Chief Fierro, that's a Santa Claus, and everybody gets a 10 out of 10, right? And then Chief Rapier he's a hammer, right? His average is about a 9.1. They're going to show that. Their intent was to show that on your EPR if that's what we went with. So if you got a 9.8 out of somebody who gives a 9.1 on a regular basis, that's pretty good, right? Where if you got a 9.6 out of somebody that usually gives 10s, there's some thinking to be had there. So to answer your question, I think that's the closest we've come to having that type of situation. Okay. But we're constantly having the discussion on where we need this evaluation system to go.
Yeah,
The discussions had all the time.
I think it would be very beneficial if maybe your subordinates would kind of vote towards your EPR score or something before it goes to the board, and the board kind of reviews it or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, you guys, was it the 22nd that did the 360 leadership? Yes. Yeah. Those are great. Those are really, I'll tell you, I did one with you guys, and there was some really candid feedback on there. I'm not nearly as cool as I thought I was, to be honest with you. So, I would say, and you don't need a formal setting to do something like that. You just need the people to, again, give that honest feedback, right? You don't need a formal piece of paper to say, hey, this is what I think about Airman Joe. This is what I think about Master Sergeant. You guys can probably do it right here. And this is the type of organization, honestly, that you're probably going to get a program like that to succeed. So, really good question, though. Thanks. What else we have, folks? Yes.
Hey, Chief. So I know there was talk when Chief Wright was still in charge about like the going to all boards for techs and maybe even staffs. Is that still a talk at all?
So I'll tell you the conversation, and I can tell you because I actually had that conversation with him, and one of his ideas, goals, whatever you may call it, is making everything up to staff sergeant similar to senior airman now, right? So everybody makes staff sergeant at a certain point in their career, and just like we have senior airman below the zone, there's a good chance we would have staff sergeant below the zone, and then we eliminate EPRs, everything up to that point. The only people that would get any sort of EPR/1206 would be those that were no kidding going to go put up below the zone. So it's almost a double whammy, right? Because we reduced the bureaucratic machine that we're putting on you guys, and two, it's saying, hey, these are our superstars. We're starting to identify them early, right? Not to say that you could be a late bloomer, because I do believe there are late bloomers, but those discussions have definitely been had, and then everybody else above that is a board. So to answer your question, yes, those discussions have. I don't know where we are in that process now, but I know it's something that our Air Force leaders have talked about. What else, folks? Yes, sir.
Chief, have they talked about bringing back time and grade, time of service points?
Yes. Yes, they have talked about it. But up to the point where they don't want you to have an advantage just because you stayed alive for a year, right? Hey, you didn't die, we're gonna promote you, right? So I think if we saw it, and I'm not saying, I wanna make sure that everybody understands, I'm not saying we are or we're not. But if we are, I think you'll see the cap a lot lower, and I think it'll be mostly a time and grade type of scenario, not so much a time and service scenario. And it'll be much on a much lower scale than those of us that were around when it'll be a much smaller scale than that. I'm not saying we're doing it, but I know the discussions have been had. That's a really good question. You can tell when you have good questions because I start sweating a little bit. So, what else? From the back of the room, what do we got? I want to make sure I keep you guys awake too. I'm not going to take any more of your time than you guys. I value your time, so I'm not going to just sit up here and have you guys watch me. If you guys have other questions you want to have the discussion, I'll hang around for a little bit. But you guys know, I hope you guys know what my office is. You guys are always welcome. And I always say this: you don't have to book time on my calendar. The only reason I ask you to do that sometimes is if you need a certain amount of time. I want to give you that much time. So if you know Kitty have a big in-depth discussion, book some time with me and we'll go over it. If you just have a quick knock on the door, hey Chief, have you got a minute? Please stop by anytime. All right. Nikki or Dre may tackle you, but if you do a little dive move there, you're probably all right. All right. One is pregnant and one's 50, so we're all right. Last chance, folks. I've already kept you for about 40 minutes, but I'll hang out for a little bit if you want to do any one-on-one, or you just want to say hi, or you just want to get a question that you didn't want to have in the group. Thank you so much. I can't even begin to tell you how much I appreciate doing this stuff, how much I enjoy being in this place that is my Air Force home. And I look forward to come back here and visit with you guys a lot. All right? Thanks. Thanks. Thanks, man.